Good morning. Welcome to Myth of Meditation number 5 of 5. This week for Naturopathic Medicine Week, I'm putting on a Myth of Meditation every morning. If you missed the last ones, you can always go back and check out the replays on the Nova Scotia Association of Naturopathic Doctors, that is NSAND Facebook group, or on my Facebook page. We also have Instagram pages that you can check out, both NSAND and then myself. I am Dr. Cheryl Carthouse, naturopathic doctor. I've worked in Nova Scotia as a naturopathic doctor since 2017. Thanks so much for joining us here on Naturopathic Medicine Week. We have put forward a bunch of different types of informations for the public to help the public understand what naturopathic medicine is and who your NDs are. If you're ever looking for an ND, you can check out the NSAND website, which is at nsand.ca, and you can find a local naturopathic doctor there. So this morning's myth: all meditations are created equal. What do you think? True or false? What is your experience? I'm sure if you've looked into this world under any of those words of mindfulness or meditation or mindful meditation or any of those things, you may come across many, many different versions of things. And how do you know if one is better than the other, if something's actually working for you, or if there's something better out there maybe? This one's maybe a little bit of a trick question. My answer would be maybe. It depends. It really depends on where you're at and what is needed for you to make the next steps in your life. So though I would not say necessarily that all meditations or all mindfulness practices are equal, there are different circumstances where different ones may be applied much better, and you'll get better results when we apply sort of the right one. And how do we know if it's the right one? I'll give you some ideas of what that could be. Mostly we're looking at what are you looking for to get out of it, and also are you getting something out of it that could be a little bit more surprising. Sometimes we even come across seemingly contradictory ideas in instruction or in the idea of what mindfulness and meditation is supposed to be. I would argue that they actually aren't contradicting themselves, and that in certain circumstances, one is really useful and maybe more useful than something else just based on the situation. And also that sometimes both of the things that seem like they contradict themselves are actually relevant. Both of them are relevant. Both of them are true. It can just take a little bit of dancing to wrap our heads around those things. So you might wonder if you're doing it right. Even this week on Wednesday, we had a walking meditation, and other mornings we've had a sitting meditation. I tend to guide particular types of meditation, the meditation with the ideas of the background that I came from, which is more of a Vipassana and sensory guided approach, where you can use so many different things even as your focus. The sensory guided is usually body-based, and then we can actually morph into using other things as our object of meditation. This is Kabuki. She's joined us this morning to meditate. She often does. And so if you are looking for relaxation benefits, that could be some immediate things that you experience. We actually flip your nervous system from maybe more of a fight or flight state into a parasympathetic, where it can actually rest, digest, and heal. A colleague of mine, Dr. Jacqueline, and I did a mindfulness workshop on Wednesday night, and you'll be able to catch the replay once it's posted as well. Goes into all of the different ideas of like, what does our nervous system actually need, and how do we change it into more of a sympathetic or parasympathetic state so that it can rest. And mindfulness and meditation can both be, and or together, can be really great way to do that. So how do we really know that you're going to be getting those benefits of whatever your practice is? Well, one, are you looking for those immediate benefits of getting the nervous system into a more relaxed and calm state? If this is not a usual state for you, you're looking for something totally different, like a really new experience, and allowing that new experience to come out. Secondly, there are long-term benefits to meditation. And if you meditate, I would say this sometimes can take a little bit of practice. If you meditate for a certain amount of time or for a certain number of hours, there's a meditation, a 10-day silent meditation retreat through Vipassana, which is one, really just means a form of meditation. But if you were to go to a Vipassana retreat, which is a 10-day silent meditation retreat, that in that scenario, you're meditating about 9-10 hours a day. If you really do everything that they suggest, it's a lot of meditation in a very short time. That was my introduction to meditation. Good morning, Trevor. Good morning, Melanie, and everybody else who's joining. That was my introduction to meditation, and I just kind of jumped in full-fledged, both feet, and it totally changed my life. So I think the benefits of this idea of long-term things, relationships are different, my reactions were different, really even just coming out of that 10 days because there was so much meditation within such a short time. So I do, at least from my experience, think that some of these more longer term benefits from meditation actually come about when we practice. I'll get into a little bit of a deeper practice and have a little bit of a longer term practice. And so what are these fruits that we might actually come across? There are 3 things that I would suggest people look for in a meditation in their own lives after they've been doing meditation for some time. One is, do you have more compassion for yourself, more love for yourself? And this includes self-talk, the things that you think about yourself. So if you're beating yourself up about things, if you have a lot of self-aggression, which could be that you have to change this and this about yourself, it could either be something physical, it could be I said that and that was stupid. Like, that's a lot of self-aggression towards yourself. Do you have more compassion of, I kind of said something that maybe didn't make sense in that circumstance, or I said something and then somebody had maybe what I would interpret a bad reaction to it, or I got feedback that I didn't think was going to happen in that scenario. And can it just be an experience for you where you're more loving and compassionate towards yourself because of that situation? Or often it actually happens when we're meditating. People are like, I'm not doing it properly. My mind wandered, and they get annoyed and angry at themselves that they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, which actually isn't true. And that ends up being, again, more self-aggression of like, you're not doing it right. Or if you ever get frustrated at something or whatever, and again, have that negative self-talk, that can be all of those things. Less good, that you're not having as much compassion and love for yourself. So does that get easier and more natural for you? We're not actually putting effort necessarily into that when it comes to the long term. We put effort in when we're meditating of really abandoning any kind of self-aggression. So when you're meditating, it's really important because we're attempting to be mindful of these things, the words, the thoughts that are around, that we are actually paying attention to when we are meditating. So it's that practice of paying attention to abandoning the self-aggression. If those thoughts come up, we leave them be and we avert our attention to something else, or we can even reframe it so that we're not thinking those things in those same way. So that's the active part that we're actually doing when we're meditating. And then the fruit is that it just starts to happen much more naturally. And we end up just having more compassion. I remember having all these circumstances where I'd have an interaction with somebody who maybe was particularly triggering to me, or would say something that I knew those words would always bother me in some circumstance. And all of a sudden, they just didn't. I was like, my own reaction super surprised me because of the compassion that I had for myself in those circumstances. So that's number 1. Number 2 is more love and compassion for other people. So in a similar way, like something that I just mentioned, when you're having an interaction with somebody and maybe at some point you would think they're stupid or whatever, all these thoughts come through of that is actually triggering for you. So you're blaming somebody else, or just so much less compassion for them, maybe even acting out. Anybody who acts out is always acting out on their own traumas and their own circumstances. And so we can start to really see that and actually understand the sensations and the experience of what they might be going through. And we learn it in a different way when we practice meditation. And so this compassion and love just starts naturally coming out towards other people. And all of a sudden, whatever was going on doesn't really bother me as much anymore. And I actually have more compassion for that person who's in that particular scenario and doing those particular behaviors, whereas before I may have gotten really angry and even acted out myself or whatever that is. So we have more love and compassion for other people. That also means that our thoughts and then our actions can actually start to change. And more specifically, we see it a lot in relationships. And then third is, do you have less suffering? This is a big category of trying to explain what the idea of suffering is. I think we learn this in levels of, well, I might not think that I have any suffering. Like maybe somebody who's in significant amounts of pain might feel like they have a lot of suffering in like a traditional sense of how we might word it. But suffering is anything that we are not able to be equanimous with. So this idea of equanimity, that something's allowed to be exactly as it is. Are you able to take that stance, allow it to be exactly as it is without a preference for whether it stays or goes? And if that, it can be fully honest, like I'm going to pick up a pencil. They all have regular lead in them. It does not matter to me if my pencil is green on the outside or blue on the outside. I can be totally equanimous with that. Can you be totally equanimous with everything in your life, whether it's yourself? I want to change this about myself. I hate this part about myself. I really, really love this part about myself, or this person, and I want to like be with them all the time. And there's like this neediness and this clinginess. That's also not being equanimous with it. So we either push things away when we don't want them there, or we hold on to things really tight and we try and grasp onto them. And there's a bit of that neediness, that clinging, if we do want them there. And both of those things are not equanimity. And it can be a very loud one, a very obvious one, and they can be very minuscule as well. And the more that we do mindfulness and meditate and practice equanimity, the more we actually learn what we are not equanimous with, and it gets more and more fine-tuned the more that we do, the more that we practice, the more that we actually start to see of that. So those are the three things: more compassion and love for yourself, more compassion and love for other people, and less suffering in your life. That's the less pushing and pulling, more ability to allow everything to be exactly as it is. That feeling, I explained it already, but that feeling of like, it doesn't matter what pencil it is. Yeah, could we just have that with everything? You have a person that you're running into in your day or wherever it might be that really rubs you the wrong way. Like, can it just be okay that they get to be exactly as they are without it necessarily triggering you? And that there's many things in that. So I know it can be a lot more complicated than how I'm simply stating it. But it can actually also be simple. There may be layers to it in order to remedy it, but it can be that simple. Can we be equanimous with it? And if not, then we dig into all of the things and all of the reasons, all of the stuff that comes up when we are not equanimous with it, and eventually we can develop that. Meditation does have its limits, but it can be a super, super helpful tool in all of these things. So I invite you, good morning, everybody. I invite you to sit up. If you're able to take a moment, if you want to be seated for this, wherever you're comfortable, just make your spine kind of a little bit straight but loose. You can even wiggle it back and forth, and we'll just start a morning meditation, the last one of our week for Naturopathic Medicine Week. You can keep your eyes open or closed. If we're doing a particular meditation with focus of the outside world, we obviously need to have our eyes open, whatever allows you to feel safe and comfortable. I often will close my eyes, especially if we're going internally, because it allows me to leave the distraction of the visual world outside. I'm going to start with a check-in of how it is to be you exactly in this moment. What is your mood? What emotions are there? And always we are extremely curious in meditation. So don't assume anything. We're not going to assume we know anything. So actually go and look. What is my mood? What are those emotions that I'm carrying right now? How busy is your mind right now? We're just checking in. We're just looking to see exactly what is truth in this moment. And whatever we find, we're going to practice having equanimity about it. That mood might feel hard, or my mind might be crazy and full this morning, and maybe I'm not supposed to have that for meditation, or that could be a thought. Just leave it. Perfect. Wonderful. That's exactly what you're thinking, and we're just trying to find truth of the moment right now. So whatever it is, you found it. You can celebrate that and allow it to be without changing anything. And then we're going to check in with our body and just notice again exactly what truth is for you in this moment. If it feels difficult, it's difficult. Allow it to be so, without trying to push that away or cling on to something that feels good and we need it to be here forever. Just allow it to be. The one guarantee in life is change. Whatever we are experiencing right now, it will change. It may become more intense. It may become less intense. Might flip a total 180. All of those are change. To do this, you can do a quick body scan, a brief body scan from your toes. Taking your time all the way up to your head and just checking in, maybe in chunks, or maybe you scan 1 inch at a time. And just check in how all your body parts are doing. You might notice particular sensations. We're just noting them, allowing them to be there. We're appreciating that this is truth right now in this moment for us. If you recognized a truth of your moment, you have officially achieved our goal for meditation today. Even if that truth is, I don't want to pay attention. I can't pay attention. I'm not paying attention. I don't want to sit. Whatever that truth is, you recognized it, and that's important. And we're going to try something a little bit different here this morning. We're actually going to pay attention to our mind space, to one aspect of our mind space. In our mind space, we can see images and we can hear thoughts. We're going to pay attention to our thoughts. Check in around and see in this mental thought space, where do you hear in your mental thought space? Just check around and see, where do words land? Could even be a song, anything with words. Where does that land inside your mental space? Maybe you can almost picture it, search around. Does it have a top or a bottom, a front or back or sides? to this space where words appear for you. And it's totally okay to be uncertain. It's totally okay to guess. We're actually just practicing being human. See if you can just explore and try something. Just pick a spot to focus on. See if a word pops up there. See if it's a sentence or a whole story. And it's okay that this can feel a bit difficult. It's something totally new. We're creating new neural pathways. It's going to be a little more difficult than things that we are very used to trying and experiencing. A different way of thinking. It is intentionally a different way of thinking. And if you find that you're noticing words, wonderful. We're going to watch them just as if we were a little cat sitting outside a mouse hole, or one of those whack-a-mole games where they pop up, we notice them. That's our little whack when you notice them, and they pop back down again. Our words and thoughts might not actually pop back down. We're just going to give them that little attention whack and let whatever else happens be. We're not trying to get rid of them. We're just trying to notice them, become aware of them. Notice the thought, and then be into that little bit more vigilant space again and wait for the next one. If we get stuck going down a trail of that thought, of really engaging with it, and then another story comes about it and a whole explanation of what it is, just bring your awareness back to vigilantly watching that mental talk space where all of our thoughts come up. And if you find that your mind is really busy and it's really hard to do this, repeat the words that you start to see back to yourself very slowly. If it feels like there's a million thoughts happening, just pick one and repeat it back to yourself. Don't worry about the other ones. Our goal isn't to pay attention to everything. Our goal is to find out one truth of this moment exactly as it is right now and put our entire awareness into it. So if you have a dozen thoughts, pick one and very, very slowly repeat the first word or maybe a short sentence back to yourself. In a calm, even voice, take as long as you can. And then we wait for the next one. And if there's a pause on that mental talk screen or on that mental talk space where we're watching, we call that rest. And so we observe rest. Often it can actually feel a little bit comfortable and pleasant. So just allow it to be. Enjoy the rest in that mental talk space. Just waiting and watching for the next thought to arise. And if nothing does arise, wonderful. You've noticed the truth for you today in that moment. And if a thought does arise, be quick, pay attention. And again, go back to observing the screen, that area, box, or whatever shape it is for you. Just observing that mental talk space again. Again, if it seems really overwhelming that there's so many thoughts, we just pick one word or a few words and repeat them back slowly to yourself in a calm voice, no matter what the thought is. Calm, slow, neutral voice. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and wiggle your fingers and your toes. It's always helpful to look around the room and orient yourself after having your eyes closed for some time. Thank you so much for joining this morning for that meditation on our last segment of Myths of Meditation for Naturopathic Medicine Week. I'm Dr. Cheryl Carthouse. I teach meditation courses, workshops, other things like that as well. I use a lot of meditation and mindfulness in my naturopathic practice as well. If you're interested in any of these things, please reach out. I'm more than happy to support you. My husband and I actually do this together, so if you'd prefer to have a male counterpart, I'm happy to connect you with him. Have an amazing day. Thanks so much for joining. You're oh so welcome.